Fanzone, united by the game, powered by Moore's World of Sport.
Welcome back to Fanzone, your hottest and latest destination for all Zimbabwean sport. We're bringing you passion, drama, and non-stop action, all happening here in the Fanzone studio. My name is Sips, and talk about drama in the Chibuku Super Cup round of 16. It's Highlanders and ZPC who make it through to the quarterfinals. A late goal doing the trick for Highlanders, and ZPC Kutyauripo squeezing through on penalty shootouts. It's more trouble for the Warriors in the FIFA World Cup Qualifiers. Another loss to Benin means that they sit at the bottom of Group C and remain winless. Today's guests are a great lineup. We've got returned guest David Kutyauripo, former Dynamos caps and Warriors players. Great to have you back on the set, David.
Yeah, thank you, Sims. It's good to be here. And good afternoon to the viewers and to the listeners. Hope we are going to have a good show here.
Yes, so David's going to be helping us on the Warriors' performances, what's been going on, his opinions, and maybe what needs to change. It's also another return to familiar face, Star FM sportscaster Simba Chiminya. So happy to have you back as always, Simba.
Yeah, my pleasure, Sips. I'm also happy to be back on the show.
Some interesting football in the Chibuku Super Cup. How did you feel about some of the results?
Yeah, I think kind of expected, when you look at Highlanders, Peter de Jong effect. And Peter de Jong, remember the last time that he was in charge of Highlanders, 2019. He just came out almost the same time towards the end of the season with 9 games to go. And he did the magic, managed to win the Chibuku Super Cup. And I'm pretty sure that this time around his target is about winning the Chibuku Super Cup. And he had a good start, managed to get that win towards the end. Mason Mshure with that free kick. And did the trick for them. And for Highlanders, this is the only thing that they can have to pacify their fans. Yeah. If you can win the Chibuku Super Cup, you end the season with a silverware, and probably next year they'll be playing in the CAF Confederation Cup. So with the league title out of sight for them, the only consolation that they can get is the Chibuku Super Cup and Peter de Jong. That's his target, and he knows how to motivate his players and also to set up the fans. Because if you look at even the fans that were there, the traveling fans that went to Nyamunga Stadium to rally behind Highlanders, you could see that they're starting to have a belief that they might end the season with something within their trophy cabinet.
Well, more on that match analysis a little bit later in the matchday roundup. But also, who'll be joining us later in Beyond the Pitch, it's Dean du Plessis, cricket commentator and analyst, will be breaking down what has happened in the Chevrons and the tour of Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan tour of Zimbabwe rather, and some of the results there. So with the episode roadmap planned out, let's head to the matchday roundup and what happened over the weekend. Alright, over the weekend there was Chibuku Super Cup round of 16, the leftover matches which didn't happen at the correct time, and with the international break, now is a great time to have those matches. We already touched on it a little bit earlier, but the first match we want to talk about is Rentals versus Highlanders. A 1-0 win for Maboso as they get through to the quarterfinals. Mason Mshure had a blind over game, 1 goal, curling free kick. Peter de Jong doing his job as usual. Your thoughts, Simba?
I think it was a match that Highlanders really wanted to win because where they are at the moment. And we've been talking about the big three not really doing well in the league. And for Highlanders, this is the chance that they have to end the season with a silverware. And, they are into the quarterfinals and going to Nyamunga Stadium in Kariba, managing to squeeze that 1-0 win, particularly against a team like Rentals, which is in top 4 in the team that they've been troubling them before. And remember, they beat them in Bulawayo in the league. And coming into this game, of course, Highlanders are a big team. But, they were a bit worried about Rentals. But they managed to do it. And when I saw it, that they've managed to go into the second half without conceding a goal, it shows that they've really done well. And like I said before, the Peter de Jong effect. That, when he comes in, he knows how to sack the players. He knows how to sack the Highlanders fans to believe that he is the right man. And this season, they might be getting something out of this season, which many thought was a poor season for them. Going into the quarterfinals, semifinals, the finals, they are fencing their chances because nobody gave them a chance.
Yeah. I mean, David, looking to you, it must be somewhat of a surprise from your days hearing that Highlanders are struggling. They're not in the relegation zone, but they're in that relegation tussle. How do you feel hearing that, the revered Highlanders are really struggling this season?
The problem is the recruitment of the players, especially for these three big teams, is now different from our years when we used to play, because it was very difficult for a player to just come and say, I want to play for Dynamos, Cape United or Highlanders, unless if there is one guy who have come and maybe checking on your progress when you're playing for another team. But like now at the moment, everyone can go and play for Highlanders. But do they have the culture for Highlanders? Maybe most of them, they don't have that culture, and they don't know how Highlanders is supposed to be treated as one of the best, because by the end of the day, it's all about playing for the badge. Most of the guys now, they are just playing for the sake of playing. That's why these big threes, they are struggling to dominate in the Premier Soccer League at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Highlanders see themselves through to the quarterfinals, 1-0 win over Herentals. The other match that happened at Nyamunga Stadium was ZPC Kariba, the hosts, against Chicken Inn, 0-0 at full time, so they went into a penalty shootouts, and eventually ZPC coming out on top of 6-5. Simba, it wasn't really much of an exciting match. Maybe Funwell Shoko had a couple of runs. Michael Chiramba from Chicken Inn, he was really trying to breathe some life, but otherwise it was a very lackluster game, to say the least.
Yeah, and it went down to penalties, and it was a matter of lucky, to pass through, and how close it was. But just looking at ZPC Kariba, I must say that this is also a year that they can look and say, we might fence our chances of winning it the same way that we saw Blaue Chiefs meeting Herentals in the final and get to win it. Because if you look at the recent years, by this time you would have been having ZPC Kariba playing probably in the preliminaries of the Chibuku Super Cup, because they'll be in the relegation zone. Yeah. But this time around, they are up there, and in terms of their performance in the league, it warrants that they also fight for the Chibuku Super Cup, because you look at the number of the games that you play in the Chibuku Super Cup. If you manage to win those 4, they are now left with about 3 games, and probably you get to win them. And look at their composition. Last year we were talking about ZPC Kariba with the best defense in the league, and look this year, even in terms of their strike force. You spoke about Fano Shoko. How many goals have he scored this season? 5 goals. And then you've got Charles Munyany with 7 goals, and then you've got Moses Demera with 4 goals, Wayne Kamurai with 2 goals. So you look at their strike force, they are scoring goals, and when they get to meet Dynamos, of course they're the defending champions, but they also believe we can do it. We have got one of the best strike force in the league.
Well, will be lots for them to build up to in their next match against Dynamos in the quarterfinals. Stepping away from the Chibuku Super Cup, we had the Manica Diamonds versus the FC Platinum game all the way back from match day 19. This game had been postponed due to the death of Brian Banda, one of the FC Platinum games. So it was played over the weekend, and a 0-0 draw for FC Platinum. They're really struggling with form, not even managing to score a goal against Manica Diamonds, who are in the relegation zone. So yes, it was a match day 19 game, but that means 5 games out of the win, 4 losses. This was a draw, 0-0, couldn't even score a goal.
Yeah, maybe they would say that probably that draw was probably something that can build to a turning point for them. Remember, they also struggled with them, and they were booted out of Chibuku Super Cup by Manica Diamonds. But one thing that I liked in that match is the return of David Bizabani, and he had last played early last month, and a lot happened, and he was frozen out, and there were allegations flying all over that probably in that match it was deliberate that he made those mistakes. But one thing that I liked about FC Platinum, they never really made anything public. They did their investigations quietly behind the scenes, and they found no evidence against the player, and the player returned. And this must also be a lesson to other clubs. Remember, there was a time we had the Asia Gate. A number of players were affected because there was just a whistleblower. We said that players were selling games in the Asia, but a lot of players were affected but no tangible evidence was found. By the time those players returned to play, they were really affected. So for me, credit to FC Platinum for handling this thing well.
Yeah. So the story there, FC Platinum, after their 5-2 loss against Scotland, Norma Pez was not happy with his team and actually had suspected that Dave Bizabani was involved in some match fixing. So he was frozen out of the team for a little while, suspended. They did the investigations. They didn't take it too public. And he was welcomed back into the side after no concrete evidence was found to suggest that he had a match fixed. So with the matches being rounded up, we have decided that this week there will be no Fanzone Team of the Week, not enough fixtures to really build something concrete. But with that being said, we still do have a Player of the Week, and his name is Mason Moshure from Highlanders. Absolutely phenomenal game, creating opportunities, taking shots at the goal, and obviously that free kick goal that he scored for Highlanders in the 84th minute, which saw them through to the quarterfinals. So that sort of rounds up the PSL side, or rather the Premier side of the football. And Simba, over to you. What's been happening in Division 1?
Oh, it's really interesting, SIPs in Division 1 because you look at the Eastern region and former PSL side, Masungo United, Una, they are now level on points with the log leaders, AFC Hunters of Marondera. So Masungo United managed to beat Great Zimbabwe University 3-1 in the Masungo Derby, and on the other end, FC Hunters were beaten 3-0 by Rusiti Tigers in Chimanimani. And it was a bad Sunday for FC Hunters because on their way back to Marondera from Chimanimani, they were involved in a road accident, but it's good that there were no injuries. Their bus hit a stray car on the road. And the third place, the team in the Eastern region, Tenex, were held to a goalless draw by Wanku Mazoze. So they are now 6 points behind the two teams that are at the top, FC Hunters and Masungo United, who are both tied on 51 points. And then we go to the Central Region Soccer League. Not much changes. It's still Shesham that are dominating. And for the past 2 weekends, they have been winning with identical scoreline, big margin, 5-0 win over Gokwen North. And the past week, they had managed to beat Gem West of Mberengwa by 5-0. And then second placed Hard Rock, they managed to win 1-0 against Shabani Mine. And third placed Gwanda Pirates, they had a goalless draw in a Gwanda derby against West Nicholson. And then we go to the Southern region again, not much in terms of the changes at the top. We have Nkai United still on top, 2 points ahead of Bulawayo Chiefs. So Nkai United winning 3-0 against Zebra Revolution, and Bulawayo Chiefs beating Bulawayo Warriors by 3-0. And third placed Wanke, they also managed to win away to Jordan FC in Philabusi. And coming back to the Northern region, really interesting. It seems like it's now a two-horse race between Ngombeawara and Agama. And Ngombeawara managed to open a 4-point lead at the top. They managed to beat Ali Sundowns by 3-0. And Agama, they dropped points. They were held to a 1-0 draw by third-placed Golden Eagles, and Golden Eagles are 12 points behind the log leaders, and Agama now 4 points behind the log leaders. So it looks like Ngombeawara in the final stretch might be opening a big game, and soon these two teams are going to meet at the weekend, Ngombeawara and Agama, but they are also midweek fixtures. Ngombeawara are away to FC Oden in Chinoi, and then Agama at home against Shamba Mine. So that's how it's looking in the lower division, but really interesting because we are now in the final stretch.
So Ngombeawara and Agama going toe-to-toe. That'll be a very exciting fixture. And Shesham FC 6 points ahead. Will that be enough in the Central region to see them through to the top? That brings us to the end of the Match Day Roundup. We're going to be looking ahead to the upcoming fixtures this weekend and Match Day 28. Match Day 28 promises us some very enticing matches. Obviously, the big headliner, the top of the table clash. It's Zimbabwe versus Scotland. Zimbabwe in first, Scotland second on the table. It's going to be a nail-biter at Wads and I. Simba, what do you think is going to happen this match? Obviously, both sides have got their differences. no Zimbabwe players in the Warriors squad, whereas Scotland had 5. So I think they'll also play a factor in this match.
Yeah, when you look at it, I think the Zimbabwe players will drop because they'll be playing in the CAF Champions League, so they didn't want to disturb their rhythm. And for Scotland, I think when they play just before the national team assignment, that's when they get to lose. The other time against Moors, they lost, and then against Dynamos, they lost. But when they are returning from the international duty, all the focus will be back on the league. And I think it's a game that both teams would not want to lose, would not want to cede ground and to the opponents because they're in the title race. But it's a game also that all the other teams that are in the title race will be looking with a keen eye because they'll be hoping that at least they share spoils, you see. But if Zimbabwe wins, then it's going to be good for them. But remember, in the first fixture, Scotland won, and it's probably a grudge match again. But if Scotland wins, then means that they also go top, and then it will be really good for them. So it's a big game for both clubs. And mentally also, it's with a bearing on the last games of the season because normally when you lose a game of high intensity and magnitude like this, it might also have a bearing in the way that you're also going to perform in the next game. Are you going to rise or you are going also to suffer the effects of that defeat? So both sides, it's a big game to them.
It is. And I think for Zimbabwe, they'll also be looking to utilize, again, mental strength. A lot of the Scotland players, 5 of them went to the Warriors camp in South Africa at the moment in Johannesburg. So a lot of fatigue and tired bodies. I'm sure Zimbabwe will be looking to utilize that to their strength. What do you think, what's your scoreline prediction for this match, Simba?
It's going to be really hard to predict, but I'm sure both coaches also be very cautious. And I'm just looking at a draw.
You're looking at a draw.
Yeah.
I think Zimbabwe, they might come back with a bit of sting in them and venom. I'm going to give it a 1-0 to Zimbabwe. David, I want to ask you, we're seeing the rise of a lot of new giants, just Scotland being one of them, PSL debutants. Moors at one stage, they were rising up in the ranks. How are you feeling about the rise of new giants as opposed to the normal Dynamos, Highlanders, Caps? How do you feel about these new giants upcoming in the PSL?
Yeah, I think it all comes to the management of the teams. Because by the end of the day now, big players, they are opting to go and play for the new guys who are coming into the PSL. Why? Because they are financially stable, 1, and 2, the way they run their things is different from the big 3. Like if I give a good example, during our time when we were playing for Dynamos or Caps United, we used to play for the love of the game, passion, right? But nowadays, the young guys who are coming in, they are playing for money. That's why they opt to go and play for these upcoming giants. Like now we are calling them the giants because they are dominating football. I recall since the time, the days when FC Platinum came in, everyone went and played for FC Platinum. But what did they get that year? It was nothing, but they benefited through getting a lot of monies. But in terms of accolades, they had nothing. At Dynamos, we won everything on the offer, but we had no money. So I think what we're supposed to applaud is they're bringing in competition, in the PSL, like Moors, Scotland, and I think Scotland and Moors, they've changed the face of PSL at the moment because they came in with more zeal, like they want to do it, and they want to show the Zimbabwean people that they can stand the heat. That's the most important thing which I liked about these both teams, and they were fighting for the top now, top position. Look, like now Moors is going down, but they're still in the top 10, which is so pleasing, and I'm happy about that. Yeah.
And also a word about Dynamos, your former Dynamos player that hasn't been the best season for them, but since Kayindu's come in along with Mukamba, there's now light at the end of the tunnel. They've won 5 from 5 thus far. Can Kayindu, July, Mukamba, can they pull Dynamos out of relegation, do you think?
Yeah, I think the new guy at Dynamos is one guy I believe He has the credentials to make things happen. And I've been watching him since he was coaching Highlanders. When he was coaching in Zambia, he's one guy who believes in his work ethics, And by seeing Denver playing like what he's doing at the moment, he's one guy who has been there. He knows how to play for Dynamos. He knows how to win for Dynamos. So I see Dynamos surviving the relegation because of the guys who are at the helm at the moment. And if you go back, I think if they had made good decision before they appointed Chaminuka by bringing Kevin Gaindo, we'll be talking something at the moment. Okay. I'm not blaming Chaminuka for the troubles which were Dynamos, but when he came in, he didn't win any games. It was draw, lose. Sometimes for a big club like Dynamos, you need a coach with character, with character and someone who has a voice in the dressing room, and someone who knows how to coach a big club like Dynamos. We have good examples like Passoa. He played for Dynamos, and he won some trophies for Dynamos because he has been into the system for a long time. So by taking someone who have never won anything in the Premier League and coach Dynamos, I think that way the executive made a big
recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Because us is former Dynamos, we want to see Dynamos up there, not to see Dynamos where they are at the moment. Yeah.
And on the topic of maybe teams not doing well, our Warriors currently at FIFA World Cup Qualifiers. They played Benin on Friday, and they've got an upcoming fixture against Rwanda this Tuesday, early this week. We're still winless in Group C. David, how are you feeling about the results? Because you're a former Warriors player. How are you feeling about these results?
Yeah, it's so disturbing, when you see your number one team not collecting maximum points. Of course, fine, we can try to run away from the truth that we are not playing at home. We are always playing away from Zimbabwe in South Africa. But if you do find out that we are playing in South Africa, we have some Zimbabweans who are staying in South Africa, they can come and rely behind our guys. By us not getting points, it's a worrisome thing. I, as Dave, the former national team player, I'm doubting Nees, to be honest, because by the end of the day, we've given him a long run. Now it's 13 games, we've won 2, and all these other games, they are losing and draws. I don't see ourselves doing well even in Morocco, because by the end of the day, if you want to get into details, I don't have a history for Nees. It was a surprise to see our ZIFA appointing him. We have good coaches here in Zimbabwe, to be honest. If we could give that support which they are giving to Nees, to our local coaches, I think by the end of the day we'll get something, because they know Zimbabwean football. These guys we are taking from outside. I'm not trying to be someone who is against the appointment of him, but we have guys, like I said, we have guys who can do better. Nomen Mapeza is there. Kaliso Pasua is there. If ZIFA could give these guys a long-term run, like 5 years, 6 years, we could see something in our own local coaches. Look at Senegal, what they did to their former captain. He's still there. They believe in him, and they are giving him the support which he needs, and the results they are coming in. Why not us do the same? Why not copy? Copying is not a problem. You get what I'm saying? This is the problem which I've seen in Zimbabwe. We opt to isolate our own and go for the foreigners. But by the end of the day, what are they bringing on the table? It's only sorrow every time we cry. If maybe we had this coach in Zimbabwe, this was going to happen for us. But by the end of the day, are we giving the support to our own local coaches? No, we opt for the foreigners. So this thing of not us winning, I think the way he's doing things at the national team is not pleasing, especially for us. We're born winners. We want to see our national team winning week in, week out. It will help us. Sometimes the coaches they will try to run away, to hide under the finger, like we don't have time. But my surprise is most countries, they are winning. They train maybe for a week. They train maybe for 2 weeks. Us, we meet sometimes a week and we are not collecting maximum points. All this, I think, is not nice for the nation. Every Zimbabwean wants to be happy. And like now, everyone is just scratching his nose. Are we going to do good in Morocco? I don't see that. Yeah.
But look, to play devil's advocate for Nees, I think as a coach, something that he deals with a lot. You spoke about the Zimbabwean style of a football. What he's essentially doing is he pulls in a lot of international players, obviously trying to get the best talent from outside, because he's not so sure about the PSL. Maybe the PSL aren't producing as many warriors as we would like. But he pulls in a lot of international players from England, South Africa, Spain, you name it. And they've all been playing different styles of football. So he has to try and mesh everyone together. First of all, get them there. Sean Frashida had to pull out because he couldn't make it, a whole bunch of things. So first they have to get there. And then he has to readjust everyone's style of football to play. So do you not think that maybe plays a factor, is that every 2 players is playing a different style of football? This one's playing Spanish football, this one's playing from England, this one's coming from the States. Like, there's a lot to try and compress into that team.
But you know what? He's not the first coach to be coaching the national team. We had a veteran coach with Sunday Chidzambo. He used to coach players from abroad, right? When you come and maybe the advantage was because Sunday was always here in Zimbabwe and he was born here. He knows the culture of Zimbabwean football. You understand what I'm saying? So it gives us a plus, right? And now when you're like now we are saying we are calling guys from Europe, England, Spain, to just mention a few, right? Are we saying these guys they're playing in that country where they are coming from? It's not a matter like when you hear that there is David Kutyauripo is playing for Northampton, I'm supposed to bring him to the national team. Does he know the culture of Zimbabwean football first? Because most of these guys, they don't know Zimbabwean football. They've never played here, to be honest. Let's be honest to each other. They've never played here. And some of them, when they're coming to play for the national team, they think we don't have the resources because they were born in what? In the UK, maybe they were born in Spain, so they don't come with that thing like I want to go and represent my country and win. You understand what I'm saying? And the core which is coming at the moment for the national team, right? I think there are only 4 or 5 guys who can guide them. Knowledge Msona, Kama Billiard, Marshall Munetsi, Nakamba, and the rest they don't know. They don't know the national team. They don't know the culture of Zimbabwean football. You understand what I'm saying? So I think it's good for Nees, if he's someone who is clever, to focus more with the local guys, because we have talent here in Zimbabwe. Some of the guys who are playing here, they can do better than the guy who is coming from England. But the opportunity now, coaches, they have got that tendency of thinking that a person who is coming from England is better off than a player who is playing in the local league. But what we're supposed to know is luck comes in a different time. Like, for example, if I want to talk about myself when I was still playing for the national team, I was the only local guy who was playing for the national team. And the rest were coming from where? From Europe. You get what I'm saying? Why? Because I could believe, and the coach believed in me, that he knows this guy can deliver more than the guy who is coming from abroad. So I think for Nees is supposed to balance by end of the day. And even the guys who are trying to help him, they are supposed to balance. Because we might have friends with a son who is in England, who is playing soccer like now, and you say he's a good player. But have you ever seen him playing week in, week out? Most of the guys who are coming in, they're playing maybe League 2, League 3. We don't see them playing week in, week out. You get what I'm saying? So we're supposed to rub all this and try to focus with most of the guys who are playing in the local league. And some of them, they are not getting the chance. There are some top players who are scoring for fun in their clubs. But to my surprise, they're not in the national team. Look at the example which I want to give you like now. Simba Bora is playing good football, but there's no one who is playing in the national team. Reason being what? Question for another. It's a question for another day.
Yeah.
We want to know is football fans, because by the end of the day it's not pleasing. This team is sitting on the top, and you find out there is no one who is playing. Scotland, they're sitting second. They have 5 players who is playing in the national team. You get what I'm saying? So if you want to try to sniff in, to want to know what is happening, something maybe it's not right. It's not right for our national team. Results won't come because most of the guys, they'll be not happy. They'll be not happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've bombed out of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Essentially, these, I guess you could say, are warm-up matches, international friendlies for AFCON later in December. While you're not a coach, what do you think the Warriors can do differently to maybe see different results in December?
It's unpredictable, especially for us as Zimbabwe, right? Because by the end of the day, we will try by our level best to have these friendlies being played to prepare for December. But during these friendly games, are we getting enough? Because by the end of the day, the same guys who are playing like now, those are the same guys who will be playing again in the friendlies. We are not bringing in new guys to see if they can fit in. You get what I'm saying? Like now, I myself, we have Machope who is playing for Scotland. He's scoring for fun as well, right? I think we need to give him more time into the national team so that he showcases his talent.
More game time?
More game time in the national. We have a player who is at tier 1, I think.
Yeah,
you're scoring. Sometimes coaches sometimes demoralize the players, especially for the national team, because you can't go and play for Kosafa. No one will be watching Kosafa. You as the head coach, you're supposed to monitor these guys and see their progress. You're not supposed to only watch Scotland playing in Harare. You don't go and watch tier 1 playing against the Manika Diamonds. You get what I'm saying? Because we have 18 teams. As a national team coach, what are you supposed to do? And your assistants, you're supposed to go in around the country and identify and bring in new guys. Friendlies are coming. I think if we bring this guy, we'll see how he plays with the knowledge Msona. If the combination is not okay, we try this guy with the Machope. Oh, in a friendly match, you can see who is who and who is not who. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't see ourselves doing well even in the friendlies or even in the what. I'm not believing in that. To be honest with you.
So you'd like to see Nees and his team watching more of the PSL, getting to know the players more.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's what European coaches do. You see them. It's very unfortunate that we don't believe in Division 1 players. You get what I'm saying, Simba? Because by the end of the day, there are some good players who are playing in the Division 1, right? I remember one time when Sunday Mofuchi when he was the national team coach, people were surprised when they see Fabian Zulu coming from Botswana, coming to play for the national team. And everyone was saying, where is this guy coming from? And you see how good he was. Mof took someone from somewhere where people, they were not expecting to see someone coming from that league, right? Why not do the same? Let's bring in surprises. By the end of the day, Ngombe is playing well, Shesham is playing well. Are we saying there are no good players in Division 1? You get what I'm saying? Let's try. And if we fail by trying, I think I'll applaud those guys because I believe they are doing a good job. Yeah.
Well, in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, the Warriors have got one more game against Rwanda. As we said, it'll be played on Tuesday. So let's see how that match goes. But that wraps up looking ahead. Let's take a look at that Predictor update. Alright, in the Predictor, the top 3 remains the same. It's Icon, Kumo, and Simba in our top 3 on the podium. Guys, please do your predictions. There's so many sweepstakes that are coming through. Sweepstake winners. I hope you've been getting your prizes. But guys, speakers, power banks, replica shirts, bucket hats, caps, it's all up for grabs. A couple of TVs as well. And even our main sweepstake prize at Suzuki Eco is still up for grabs. So head on over to fanzone.co.zw. Get predicting. A match day 28 and 29 predictions are open. If you feel like you want to get onto the game early, head on over there now and get predicting. Beyond the pitch, this is the segment where we take a break from the footballing world in Zimbabwe and we look to what other sports is happening in the sporting realm of Zim. The Chevrons hosted Sri Lanka in what was hoped to be a redemptive series for the Chevrons after a long, tough series of results. but more losses, a couple more losses than anticipated, and more questions from fans about coaching strategy, team selection, and whether or not these results will affect the upcoming T20 World Cup Qualifiers hosted here later this month on the 26th. To join us for this segment, we've got Dean du Plessis, a cricket commentator, analyst, and an avid lover of the sport. So, Dean, so glad to have you back on set with us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Sibs. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's dive right into the results. Let's start a little bit more recent, obviously, with the Sri Lankan tour of Zimbabwe. On the T20 side, what happened? We only won 1 out of 2. We should have really maybe won 2 out of 3. But results not really going our way.
Yes, exactly. I think that would have been a fair result had Zimbabwe won 2. I think a 2-1 result to Zimbabwe, if you look at the way that the games had been played, and if you look at how the balance predominantly was in favour of Zimbabwe, that would have been a bit more acceptable. Not 2-1 to Sri Lanka. So I think a lot of where Zimbabwe are going wrong is mentally and psychologically they are not strong enough. So what you'll often find, and it's been a problem that has bedeviled and plagued Zimbabwe cricket for a number of years, is that they can get themselves into positions where they do everything almost flawlessly. They take brilliant outfield catches, their ground fielding is very good, the bowling is good, and just as you think that they're going to shut it down, something just goes completely wrong. And suddenly catches are being dropped, or there's little misfields and fumbles in the outfield, or for some reason a bowler, when he knows fully well that as you now close the innings down and you're supposed to be bowling it nice and full in the block hole, for some reason he then starts bowling length deliveries, short deliveries, which then in a modern game of T20 cricket, the majority of your batters are very, very good at capitalizing on. I mean, that first T20 international, that was a very disappointing scenario. You got young Tino Maposa coming in to bowl, and he conceded 26 runs. Now, it can and it does happen. I need only remind you what happened in the 2016 World Cup final of the T20 World Cup final. West Indies up against England. West Indies were dead and buried. Marlon Samuels did play very nicely, but along comes Ben Stokes, bowls 4 balls and 4 sixes were hit by Carlos Brathwaite, and that was that. The West Indies won very comfortably. So it's no stranger in this format of T20 cricket. But the difference is that Stokes actually bowled decent deliveries, which Carlos Brathwaite was just on fire. Poor old Maposa, unfortunately, up to that point he'd been bowling very nicely, in my opinion, but then he let it slip by just bowling very, very innocuous medium-pace short deliveries that Comindo Mendes was able to capitalize on. And I think also fans are getting a bit frustrated in hearing the coach and the captain continuously saying, you know, we've got a couple of youngsters and they've never been in situations where they know how to shut the innings down. Because what they are now beginning to say is, hold on, but Sri Lanka had a couple of uncapped players and they stepped in and they were able to do what they needed to do. You know, so I think unfortunately now the rigors of international cricket demand that even if you have played very little international cricket and if you're finding your way, you need to be ready to step into pressure situations and do the best you can to deal with it. You know, so if you remember back maybe 10, 15, 20 years, the captain always had to say to the fast bowler, get ready, you're going to be bowling. Well, that's no longer the case. All your fast bowlers have to be ready and loose-limbed and you know, ready to bowl. And that's how it should be with your whole team. You work together as a team. I think we've had way too many individual performances now for a very, very long time, which has not culminated in the success of winning. So yes, you'll argue and say that Zimbabwe ran Sri Lanka close, which they did. But at the end of the day, running close and winning, there's two very big differences between those two results.
Yeah, I mean, just on your point of bowling, on Sunday the T20 Zimbabwe posted 191, and in the modern day game, it's a score which is achievable to chase, but I think at a ground like Harare Sports Club, you should really be looking to defend that sort of scoreline. And Sri Lanka, they chased it down in 17.2 overs, which is an absolute hiding.
Yeah, so what Sri Lanka did very well and what Zimbabwe did not do very well was that the Sri Lankan batsmen utilized so we refer to the big playing areas as pockets. So there's a big boundary on the leg side. What Zimbabwe were trying to do pretty much throughout their innings was to muscle the ball to the boundary or over the boundary, as opposed to placing the ball into the gaps, running hard, turning twos into threes. We did see one very good thing where there was an all-round 4. That was quite nice. I think it was Burl and Musikiwa who did that. So that was good. Sri Lanka, what they simply did, they went out there and they treated every ball on merit. So certainly you'll see that there were quite a few sixes hit by their top-order batsmen. But more skillfully than that is that they rotated strike and they ran very, very hard between the wickets and they took a lot of the pace off the ball. They waited for the ball to come to them as opposed to trying to hit the ball. So what you saw, for example, with Tadeunashi Marumani in the first 2 games, especially the first one, all that he was trying to do is stand dead still at the crease and to swing as hard as he possibly could, and it didn't work. Now, even in the third and final T20 international, he got himself to 50, which was very good, but you'll see that his innings of 56, he faced over 40 deliveries, whereas the Sri Lankan top order, when they went about their runs, with the top order, one of them who scored 70 odd, those 70 runs came off. Yeah. So, and the reason why is because there was strike rotation. Admittedly, Blessing Muzarabani and Richard Ngarava, I think, are exhausted. They are completely done. And you'll see that, Muzarabani bowling 3.2 overs for 40 odd, and very similar. Well, in fact, that was Ngarava, 3.2 overs for 43. Muzarabani 3 overs for 43. That's very, very expensive, and these are your 2 fast bowlers who you rely on, which I guess brings us to another point that I'm sure you'd like to pursue, is that we cannot continuously rely on Richard Ngarava and Blessing Muzarabani with the new ball. We can't continuously rely on Sikandar Raza and Sean Williams in the middle order. Other people have to stand up and be counted properly now, not just chip in with bits and pieces.
Yeah. I think we did see a little bit better performances, sort of to like wrap up the Sri Lankan series. Coming off the tests against New Zealand and South Africa, even in that T20 tri-series, we really struggled with the bat. So this was an opportunity for the batsmen to do better, and they did. Curran got in both of the ODIs a 70-yard. Raza again, who's actually now the number 1 ICC ranked all-rounder, which is a brilliant result, and even Bennett with that 80-odd in one of the T20s. So a much better batting performance, but as you said, still individualistic. Both teams the players aren't backing each other up. We very rarely see 250s in the squad. It'll be 170 and then everyone else is scoring 25 and below.
Yeah. I think, to be fair, the New Zealand and South Africa bowling attack, especially their seamers, well, in fact, all round their bowling attack is very, very superior to Sri Lanka. And that's very important to notice. The New Zealanders were outstanding. Also what they did was they understood the dimensions of the field so unbelievably well. So what they did was they had their fielders, their correct fielders, fielding in the right places. And that's very important. You need to understand which fielder should be fielding where. And New Zealand and South Africa did that very nicely in that T20 tri-series. And as you rightly said, nobody got to grips with the steep bounce of Will O'Rourke, for example, from New Zealand. Nobody was able to deal with the spin of the South Africans that they had. And Keshav Maharaj wasn't even playing because he was injured. But everything that South Africa threw at Zimbabwe was just a bit too much, and New Zealand as well. And Sri Lanka, they've got some fine players, don't get me wrong, they have got some very, very good players, but they don't have the pace and the swing of what New Zealand had. And I don't quite think that they also had those field dimensions wrapped up like New Zealand did. But now you do have to give credit. As you rightly said, Sikandar Raza was very good in those one-day internationals with those half centuries. Very disappointing now that Zimbabwe get to the last over. They got the game in their hand and they get a hat-trick against them and they lose the game. Yeah. That would have infuriated me as a coach. Again, that's just something that Zimbabwe have struggled with mentally and psychologically for a number of years. This is not this current crop of players which who continuously make the same mistake. It seems, unfortunately, to be a culture which has been with Zimbabwe for a number of years. And so what happens is the current crop of players look up to their predecessors and make very much the same mistakes that the previous bunch of players would have made.
And so, stepping away from the white ball cricket and moving more towards the tests, obviously against South Africa, not great results, even against New Zealand at one stage, losing by an innings and 359 runs. One of the main topics from pundits, fans, analysts was the team selection. So I want to ask you, Dean, A, did the coach miss maybe a couple of players? And B, if so, would that have really changed the results in the tests?
Well, I have to tell you that the coach in Zimbabwe cricket has got very little say in who gets selected. So that's the first thing. So you got your convener of selectors, you got one or two other selectors who are there. The coach will probably be part of the meeting just to make it look all kosher. But at the end of the day, he has very, very little say in who goes out on that field. Let me assure you of that. And it has been like that for a long, long time. So,
sorry, just quickly stop you there. Is that correct, though? Should the coach know?
No, it's not correct. The coach should almost have full say in what's going on because he's the one who works with the players and he's the one who understands their weaknesses and strengths. But it's just a situation where the coach will be invited to meetings, but at the end of the day, it's the chairman or the convener of selectors, David Mutendera, and of course Alton Chikumbura as well, who's got a very, very big part in terms of selection. They are the ones who call the shots, and more often than not, the coach has to submit to what they want, which is a real shame, because you do obviously need your chairman of selectors. And yes, I would imagine that there are times when the coach will be overridden. It happens. But generally speaking, that coach should have... you look at how very successful the likes of Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes are. Brendan McCullum is the coach of England. Ben Stokes is the coach of England. These two work together as a pack, and they are very, very successful. Although you'll have Rob Key, the chairman of selectors there, but let me tell you, he takes healthy steps back, and you can have any interview you like with Rob Key. Listen to them. And the first two names that he will mention with consistency and regularity are Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes. So he understands that I'm not going to get too involved here because although I'm the chairman of selectors, the captain and the coach are the ones who know how all these players are performing. I think maybe perhaps where Rob Key does get a bit involved is when he wants one or two of the younger players who've been doing well in the county circuit to be introduced and to be a part of the system. This does not happen here in Zimbabwe cricket. But Sips, I'll tell you something, regardless of who Zimbabwe would have selected, it wouldn't have made any difference. New Zealand are an exceptionally well-oiled machine. Every player there understands his role to perfection. They had a very good bowling attack, and they have a very long and very flexible batting lineup. And their bowling attack was considerably better than the South African bowling attack that we hear for the test matches. And I think also the respectful complacency that South Africa had towards Zimbabwe was well reflected with Vian Mulder, who was 360 odd not out at lunch, or 350 on the verge, on the cusp of making history by breaking Brian Lara's record. Now, he said all the right things, and Brian Lara is a legend. That record should have stood, but you would imagine that Coach Shukri Conrad would have said to him, do you really want to be the proud record of scoring 415 or whatever it could have been against Zimbabwe? Had he maybe played against Pakistan or India or England or any of the much stronger nations, I can assure you he wouldn't have declared over lunch as much as he says he would have done it. But he wouldn't have done that. But Vian Mulder is a very respectful individual, and there's no way that he would have said anything derogatory towards Zimbabwe cricket. Darryl Cullinan, who used to play for South Africa 20 odd years ago, he would have, but not Vian Mulder.
So we've had some very strong competition, that tri-series between South Africa and New Zealand, and also now Sri Lanka. And we're hosting the T20 World Cup Qualifiers for 2026 here in Harare, and I'm sure Bulawayo as well. That's later this month. So some of the teams participating: Namibia, Kenya, Nigeria, Malawi, Uganda, Tanzania, and Botswana. So surely from those names that, yes, Namibia is always a competitor, we should be very positive, looking for positive results in those qualifiers.
Yes. Yes, you would think so. But don't forget, it was Namibia and Uganda who fixed Zimbabwe in the previous T20 World Cup qualifiers, Africa World Cup qualifiers, and they ensured that Zimbabwe did not travel to the T20 World Cup, which was held in the West Indies and the United States of America last year. However, I do feel that in this instant, the crowd support of Zimbabwe will honestly see them through. I think there was a bit of complacency by Zimbabwe. I really do. I think, if you remember the T20 World Cup qualifiers that was held in Zimbabwe, or in Bulawayo, should I say, Zimbabwe got through that without even really breaking a sweat. Some of the games were scrappy, but they got through that because they knew that USA were a good side. They knew that Nepal had a few good players and so on. I think that they went into that World Cup qualifier, the Africa World Cup qualifiers, which was held in Namibia, with a little bit of complacency. Uganda sorted Zimbabwe out, Namibia sorted Zimbabwe out, and that meant that they didn't travel to the World Cup. I think this time round, with the support of the Zimbabwean supporters, although they're a bit fed up at the moment, but they'll still be there in their thousands, I can assure you, to support Zimbabwe. And I think also that, the likes of Brian Bennett and a couple of other players, I'm very impressed as well, I have to say, with Tashinga Musikiwa. There's some potential there. Let me tell you, Tony Munyonga is there and thereabouts. And so with a combination of the younger players and the experience of Sikandar Raza, this time round, I think Zimbabwe will be packing their bags and going to the next level.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So while the men's Chevrons, they've still got a couple of things to think about. The women's Chevrons, on the other hand, are riding a wave of euphoria, unbeaten in the T20 World Cup qualifiers Africa Division 1. So they beat Namibia, Uganda, Tanzania, and they've booked their ticket and their spot for the T20 World Cup qualifiers. But this time round, it's the global qualifier, and that will be in the beginning of next year, January of 2026. So a couple of words for the women's Chevrons, Dean, and how well they've been playing.
Well, first of all, I think I can safely say on behalf of every single cricket lover, we are immensely and extremely proud of you ladies. And they always seem to be flying under the radar, don't they? Because as much as we talk about them on social media and we know what they're doing, but you always feel that they always have to be a bit more satisfied with crumbs from the table as opposed to joining the big banquet. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. Now, the next step with the global qualifiers obviously is going to be a big one, a big step. They've got some younger players who are now beginning to make their presence known, but then they still have the core, the experience of the older players, which is good. I don't quite know how it's going to go for them in these global qualifiers. It's very difficult to predict. Let's just leave it at that and see how they go. They did go to Ireland, where unfortunately they lost. There were some very good individual performances. For example, Laureen Chuma was very good. Genuine all-rounder is Laureen. And one or two other players who also played quite nicely, but Ireland were just too good for them. And I'm not too sure that's going to change overnight, up against Ireland, Nepal, and a couple of the teams. The nice thing about this, though, is that they've played each other quite consistently and regularly. So none of them are really unknown quantities or unknown factors to them. But I think, again, this is the age-old problem that we talk about with sport in general in Zimbabwe. It is now the mental side. Somebody needs to mentally be with these players and help them, because I honestly don't believe they lack in skill. Where I do believe they falter and where they do have problems is trying to get over the line. So you may find that they'll beat a couple of the sides. But now when it really matters that they go through to the actual World Cup, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they stumbled, not because of their inability, but because of the mental block that so many sport and sporting disciplines in Zimbabwe seem to have.
So the way this qualifier will work, 10 teams will be going into the competition, and only the top 4 will have their final ticket to the World Cup, to the T20 World Cup. So it's going to be interesting to see their journey, their preparation. I'm sure they'll be looking to have a couple of other test series because we're in the beginning of September. There's still a long time until January next year, so they should be keeping up with their matches. But also, just to mention, Kilis Ndlovu, she has been one of the standout players in the ladies' side. Coming from the under-19s in 2023, was the captain. She has really made her presence felt. She recently has been called up by the ICC. Her bowling action, they weren't happy with bowling action. She's been suspended. As an analyst, I know that rules can change, and sometimes, going through a fine tooth and nail can be quite hard. But between the head coach, the assistant coach, and the bowling coach, should they not have spotted this sort of error, or maybe that potentially this could be wrong for Ndlovu?
Yes, they should have, and I'm not sure what went wrong there. I mean, Walter Chawaguta is such an experienced coach. He really is. He's a people's person as well. He knows how to deal with people as well. And I don't know how this problem snuck through the net. To be perfectly honest with you, because gone are the days where there is so much that you can have at your disposal. So surely, not just Walter Chawaguta, but a lot of people who would have been with young Kellis and would have seen how she went about her business, they would have should have picked up something and said, hold on, there could be a potential problem here. I mean, all the games are on YouTube, and there is footage, there's film available that you can see, especially when Zimbabwe were an island. That was pretty well documented, or well covered, should I say. And you really wonder why that wasn't picked up then. So I totally agree with you. That was a bit naughty on behalf of the think tank and on behalf of the coaching staff. And you just wonder if they feel that they were going to get away with that, because that's a real shame. Because, of course, now what it does is it doesn't just leave you one bowler short, but it does huge psychological damage to that particular player. Now, some of them are very strong and they find a way back. Others fall by the wayside. So I'm just hoping that once again there'll be a sisterly figure or a motherly figure, or even indeed a fatherly figure, who will just put their arms around her and say, right, we've now been called out for your bowling action. This is what we're going to do. But do you have the heart? Because understand, there's going to be some tears, there's going to be some frustration, but we want to make sure that you get back and you do everything to the best of your ability.
Well, thanks, Dean. That was a great discussion on the cricketing front. Afro T10s coming up later this month, as well as the World Cup Qualifiers for the men's hosted here in Zim. So let's see how the Chevrons fare in those sort of fixtures. We hosted Zambia in international volleyball friendlies. We sent 3 teams, or we had 3 teams: the men's volleyball team, the women's volleyball team, and the under-20 side. So Simba, some mixed results. We didn't quite win all of our games. I understand that our Zimbabwe women's, they won their game against Zambia, but otherwise the level between Zimbabwe and Zambia is still quite substantial.
Yes, but for me, the most important thing was getting to play as the national team at international stage, because we haven't been really doing that, and also factoring in the under-20 in there for development was something that I really applaud the Zimbabwe Volleyball Association for doing, the organizers, because, look, we've been playing mostly the clubs at international tournament, international level, but the national team hasn't been in action, and I think for every player, the ultimate goal is to be chosen to play for the national team. So this is really good. This should be starting point. We have hosted Zambia. We should also host countries like Angola, Mozambique. And, volleyball is really interesting. And, if you really put your all into that sport, it's really interesting. Look in Mozambique, look in Angola. How many numbers do they draw to watch their matches? Look at even across in Zambia. And there's so many people that come to watch it. So if they can leverage on this stepping stone that they started against Zambia and try to go forward, I think, the same way that people have so much interest in the Warriors, in the Chevrons, and the Sables, is the same way that should also be happening to the national volleyball team.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the inclusion of the under-20 side, it's really good work. Obviously, with their tournament coming up later this year, their World Cup, it's going to be a vital preparation for them. We're able to catch up with Farai Moto, who's one of the executives from the Zimbabwe Volleyball Association. So let's have a listen to what he had to say.
This event, you may want to know that is going to be an opener to a floodgate of events in Zone 6 region. For today and for this weekend, we're only playing Zambia because these are the ones who were able to travel. But going forth, we see a number of teams, including Botswana, Malawi, South Africa, coming into the show. But for this weekend, we only have Zambia.
All right, we've already seen that there are senior women, senior men's, and we also saw the under-20s in this. Is this going to be something that you're going to be continuing with as a template?
Once we start, we're not stopping. Our under-20s will be participating in Egypt in a few weeks to come at the World Cup Qualifiers under-20s. And this project is going to run for as far as I think in the next 10 years. We want to keep these teams together, both for the ladies and for the men. So the 20s that you saw today, playing today, were recently in Namibia at the Region 5 games, where they did so well. And we said no, when they qualified, if they qualify for the continental show, why not participate? So their participation in this event is actually a preparation for a higher stage that is going to come in the next 2 weeks. Once we start, we're not stopping. Our under-20s will be participating in Egypt in a few weeks to come at the World Cup Qualifiers under-20s. And this project is going to run for as far as I think in the next 10 years. We want to keep these teams together, both for the ladies and for the men. So the 20s that you saw today, playing today, were recently in Namibia at the Region 5 games, where they did so well. And we said no, when they qualified, if they qualify for the continental show, why not participate? So their participation in this event is actually a preparation for a higher stage that is going to come in the next 2 weeks.
So it's great work from Farai Moto and his team. Obviously, such tournaments are very valuable, and it's only the beginning, so it's exciting to see who else we can get. It's Zambia this time around, maybe Angola, maybe Mozambique. We'll see what happens in the next volleyball tournament. But also, just to wrap up, beyond the pitch, Team Zim Olympics. So we are sending over a team to the World Athletics Championships hosted this year in Tokyo, Japan, from the 13th of September to the 21st. Some familiar names and faces you'll remember is Makarao and Chiramba, our 200-meter sprinters. They'll be competing. Isaac Mpofu, one of our marathon runners, he'll also be competing. And even some newer athletes who didn't quite make the August 2024 Paris Olympics. But we have a 400-meter athlete, a 400-meter hurdle sprinter, and even a triple jumper this time round. So we're wishing our Team Zim Olympics all the best, and we'll be looking forward to hearing some results. Well, that wraps up the Beyond the Pitch. Let's go to Rumours and Rubbish. We'll be discussing the Warriors and Michael Nees. Rumours and Rubbish. This is the segment where we talk and discuss, have debate, opinions on what we're seeing and hearing in the sporting world of Zimbabwe. Remember, these are our own opinions and thoughts. Do what you want with this discussion, with this debate, but otherwise don't hold us too liable. But this time round, we're going to be talking about Michael Nees and his Warriors side. From 12 games, just 2 wins for the coach. A lot of fans and a lot of pundits are calling these set of results as rubbish. And is it grounds to sack Michael Nees? David, I know you are a hard-cutting person, cutthroat, so I'm going to ask you that question first.
Yeah, I think it's high time. It's high time. If we want to try to turn this page from the previous one, if it was a local guy, by this time he should have gone. But now it's a different ball game. 12 games, 2 wins. The man is still at the helm. So it's a worrisome issue, yeah, which needs to be solved as soon as possible.
And for you, Simba, do you think this is grounds for a sacking?
Yeah, but you look the world over, when results are not coming, what do you do? The coach is sacked. But I think when you look at the rubbish of it, is the Zimbabwean mentality altogether. I think we've been really too negative as a nation, going around in circles. Because, you know, when you have a foreign coach, he's given a long rope. When it's a local coach, After one game or two games, is supposed to be sacked. But all in all, I think when you look at it, we have been going around in circles. We have not been really solving it because our problem is not really on that technical bench alone. Look at our structures. Are they really structures that can bring out the best out of the national team? The answer is no. We don't have really structures that are going to allow us to enjoy success at international stage. And if there been continuity at the office from the coaching department and also the administrators, it's say even ZIFA, when the new president comes in with his board, they start afresh. There's no continuity from the previous board. And then another one comes in. We have been running in circles. We haven't really done anything that you'd say, do we have even a high performance center? And as far as our grassroots is concerned, look, there was a time we touched on the issue of in the players coming in from different clubs. But look at France, therefore the Clairefontaine. And all these young players would have come through a certain structure. It doesn't matter where you'll be playing at senior level, at club level, but when you're back in the national team, the philosophy, everything that you're going to do, you've done it or learned about it, at young age. The core of the team will be from the structures that are within the nation. So that should be the happening in Zimbabwe. The core of our team should be coming from our junior structures from here. But look at how our national under 17, our national under 20, under 23 are in shambles. By now, we should be knowing the number of players that we say from the under 17 are going to graduate into the under 20, and those in the under 20 to the under 23. And by the time we have players in the under 23, some of them will be making cameo roles in the senior team. But we don't have all those things. And for how many years have we been operating like this? It has been quite a number of years. So I think the problem is the Zimbabwean mentality. Look at our fans, how negative they are on local players, how negative they are on local coaches. And you can't build the base of your national team when you hit your own. You can't move forward.
Yeah, I think I'll be a bit gracious towards Nees. I think it would be a little bit too soon, I think, to sack him now. Maybe let him see out the rest of the year after AFCON, and we'll, I guess, go from there. Last time, Dave, you were on the show. You'd rumored to us and teased to us that you might be making a return to the PSL. We haven't seen such since then. So what happened? Did a deal fall through? What happened?
Yeah, I think my return was derailed because of match fit, and I sustained an injury. So I couldn't make it to the team which I had not mentioned that I wanted to join. So I hope and believe the fans of Zimbabwean football, they will see me next year donning the same jersey for the team which I'm not gonna mention for 2026 season. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you still believe you have a chance? Next year is going to be your year.
Yeah, next year is gonna be my year, because what I believe in, age is just a number. What you carry is the most important thing, because I have the weapon which most of the guys who are playing at the moment they don't have, which is character and that charisma to win something come end of the season. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dave, still very, very ambitious and still looking to wear that jersey for the unnamed team.
Yeah. So you'll be the second oldest player in the PSO after
IB9
Benza.
Yeah. Definitely. As long as he's a good friend of mine, Miss IB. So I just want to try to join him in the league, so that will be the talking points in the Premier League, that we have old guys who are playing in the Premier League. Why are we supposed to be playing? Because we are not seeing what we used to see before when we were still playing. So I would just want to try and bring those things back into Zimbabwean football, right? Yeah. And I want to make history. I was born to make history. You know, I think on this show I mentioned that I was the only local guy who was playing for the national team, starting, not sitting on the bench. And I think and I believe before I retired in 2015, I was part of the best 11 in the Premier Soccer League at 37, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the history which I've made in Zimbabwean football, and I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is an incredible feat at the age of 37. So I'm sure you're going to be on your grind and back in the gym as you've kept up always.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So thank you to all of you who tuned in for Game Time. Last week we had lots of participants. It was a really, really good outturn. The answer was Rodwell Chinyengeterere. So well done to those of you who got that answer correct. You should be getting a phone call from us very soon. So congratulations to you. But Game Time Week 4, this question this time round is, which two teams share the record for the most Chibuku Super Cup wins? So that's your question for this week. Go on, enjoy, answer it. Head on over to fanzone.co.zw. Click on the Game Time Week 4. Find the secret code in that article and answer it away. Well, that brings us to the end of the Fanzone episode. Thank you to David Kutyauripo for sitting in the Fanzone with us. You as well, Simba. And also to Dean, who's not on stage. But a great episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And lots of great episodes to come. If you have enjoyed this sort of content, remember to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, like the video. We upload weekly, so there's lots of videos to come, and even content to watch from all our other previous videos. Follow us on social media, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok. Those are where you'll find the secret codes. Also the WhatsApp channel as well. Make sure you've signed up for the Predictor on fanzone.co.zw. Get predicting, and hopefully you might be able to win a sweepstake winner. Well, that's us from the Fanzone studio, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.